So this new Ken Carson album, it's not bad. Yeah, here we have a brand new album, Experiment, from Atlanta rapper Ken Carson, who is now 5 solo albums in and still on Playboi Carti's OPIUM label. It's no secret that in the past I have been highly critical of this man's music. I believe at one point I even gave a record of his a 0. It's gotten to the point where I feel like in a lot of ways I have, very much tuned what Ken is doing out, or at the very least I'm like not having super high expectations from just about anything that this man does. Like, for a while now, I really have thought this man is one of the weakest links in the current rage scene. And that's because for one album after the next, I've heard almost nothing but mediocre flows and unrecognizable vocal delivery, bad and uninteresting beat choices, or ones that are at the very least super average for the scene of music that he operates in. And I feel like artistically he's really done nothing to separate himself from the crowd of other artists out there who are shooting for a similar sound. Like, his direct connections to Carti, I think, have been buoying this man's career for a while. With all of that being said, Experiment here was kind of a surprise for me. However, I wouldn't say it lives up to its title in the traditional sense, I guess, because it's not like this record is an experiment in the avant-garde sense, or that Ken is going for a listen and an experience that is far more challenging and weird and out there than anything he's done before, or weirder than what you're going to hear out there from your average rage artist these days. I guess you could say the experiment going on with this record is Ken is trying his hand at doing something that is maybe a little bit more conventional, or at least takes a lot of the current influences and trends going on in rage and tries to frame them in a way that is a little bit more approachable. Almost the opposite direction and trend we see a lot of newer artists and records moving in, where mixes and vocal performances and just about everything are getting increasingly distorted, harsh, and exploring beyond the genre confines of this style. Like I said, Ken is really trying to expand his palette a little bit on this record, and does so in a very self-aware way. There's even a bar on the track Shade Sun, which I guess has some input from Tu Hollis, where Ken pokes fun at the idea that people are going to call whatever he does rage regardless. In that spirit, I will say this track very much does not sound like a rage song. It's more of a spacey, moody trap banger whose pacing is a little underwhelming, but still, there's like room to breathe in this mix, and the vocals are super readable. But yeah, across this record, not only does Ken spend a lot of time just not making rage at all, but actually puts out a lot of cuts where he's kind of fully embracing a lot of his biggest influences, rather than just kind of doing the straight, noisy, hedonistic nihilism thing. There are tracks on this record that sound heavily influenced by the likes of Future, early Young Thug, even Lil Uzi Vert. Those last two actually have features deeper into the record, and even though they do kind of run as two of the more underwhelming appearances on this record, it's kind of cool that Ken has reached a point where he can finally collaborate with some of his biggest inspirations, or have maybe his biggest inspiration copy another one of his biggest inspirations, meaning Playboi Carti appearing on the track Death Note, which from the start is kind of a dead ringer for like an older Future track, though maybe a little bit more distorted on the mix side, which I guess is a pretty accurate assessment given that Playboi Carti does appear in the second half of the track, and the only thing he does on this song is delivers a flow that is a dead ringer for a Future feature, down to even having his vocals presented in a way to where like he's in that exact pitch range of Future's voice, which again, it's kind of the lowest point of the song. I mean, Ken was kind of holding it down on his own. I don't really need Playboi Carti to come through and pretend to sound like Future. But still, not only do we get some more conventional trap bops on this record, the songs that do head in more of a rage direction have, I think, better bass resonance, better mixing, better vocal performances, where Ken sounds refreshingly locked in. For as much as he claims he's giving us like, a codeine-soaked experience on this record, Ken has never sounded this awake, alive, on the ball, and cogent for an entire album. I mean, I'm not saying Ken is like dropping strokes of lyrical genius all over this record now, but these are some of his most lucid bars for the entirety of a whole project ever. And sometimes he's even like outlandishly funny, or dare I say even charismatic a little bit. One bitch, two bitch, three bitches, I'm Dr. Seuss. I'm in the O like a kid in PE standing in a hula hoop. His sense of humor is weird, but like it gets the job done. And once more, like a lot of his swagger does feel borrowed from a lot of old Young Thug mixtapes and projects, but it still works and feels at least a little specific to him given that it's presented in this harsher, more aggressive fashion. Now, with 20 plus tracks on this record, of course there are some duds or moments where it feels like the mixing or the flows regress a little bit, like Ken's delivery gets so repetitive and the mixes on these beats are so fried, very little of anything that's happening is like translating. It's this handful of moments like The Ritual, for example, or even the interlude track, which by no means is an interlude, it's just a damn unfinished song that's like put onto the record. These tracks sound far worse quality-wise than nearly anything else on the album, and also in a lot of ways to me sort of say that Ken is kind of growing out a little bit of some of these stereotypical Rage vibes, because vocally, emotionally, and lyrically, he's clearly trying to express and deliver at least a little bit more, and doesn't just simply want the production and the distortion, the compression, the saturation to do all the work, which I'm very much in support of. Still, with that being said, when this album goes hard and heavy, it goes hard and heavy, and those moments are pretty visceral and enjoyable. FWOO, or fuck with double O, I imagine it is. I'm sorry. I'm 40 years old, okay? Like, the beat on this one is so distorted and so heavy and so nasty, it's like sloshing around. And also the track Shopping featuring Destroy Lonely, another artist I'm historically not the biggest fan of. They somehow managed to eke out a really catchy Rage anthem here with some earworm hooks and a pretty decent beat. And there were plenty of other tracks that took me by surprise, whether it be Knocking or, of course, EDM, Truth, Out of My Body. Again, by modern Rage standards, and if you've been following the artistic conversation of the genre, this album is a lot more conventional than it is experimental. And honestly, I feel like that's a good and healthy thing. This record feels like Ken is worrying less about where he and his sound sits with respect to this scene and to this genre, and he is thinking more about, like, you know, where he is currently as an artist. Why else would you, again, get a track like Knocking, where he's bringing in, like, these cute little synth leads and kind of grandiose piano chords, and going for something that's, like, a little bit more luxurious and vibey, and a wider variety of tastefully done vibes across the entirety of this project, honestly. So, yeah, as harsh and as critical as I have been of Ken Carson's work up until this point, this new album here took me by surprise. Like I said, it's not bad.